Technology professionals are finding increasingly important roles in their agencies. In a social transmedia communications ecosystem, agency creative work is becoming more focused on integrating digital experience design into brand communications, or brand experiences into communications design. In many agencies today, the domain of the creative technologists has expanded well beyond production, and they are now prominent participants in creative strategy and ideation, even new product development and new businesses. So today, we have three individuals with deep experience with these challenges and their agencies that are known for innovative practice and great creative work. We have Jordan Berkowitz, the Executive Creative Director, Creative Technology and Innovation at Ogilvy, Angela Way, Chief Digital Officer from Arnold, New York, and Bernard Briggs, the CTO of T3 in Austin, New York. I'm going to first let them introduce themselves and tell us a bit about their background in technology and creative and how they got into the roles that they are today in the agency world. We'll get on with the discussion after that. So,
ladies first. Hi everyone, I'm Angela. I am the Chief Digital Officer of Arnold, New York, and I actually started or moved into this role fairly recently, about 3 months ago. And my background actually is I started embracing digital technology in the pre.com boom when Razorfish was the web consulting service company du jour. And then I sort of followed that path and actually went from web consulting into digital advertising. And from there also, did startup for a bit and then also worked at, most recently, Time Inc., a large publisher where I helped launch their Time Inc. digital corporate division. And I just thought it's such an interesting time right now to be back in the agency world where so many people are sort of struggling with, how do we think about what advertising means today, what is the output of the work that we're doing, and how so much of that is fueled by technology. So I'm very excited to have this conversation with you.
Hi, I'm Jordan Berkowitz. I'm the Executive Director of Creative Technology at Ogilvy. I kind of have a circuitous route to this job, I suppose. I went to school to study photography and ended up with a degree in computer science, and then spent about 2.5 years producing large live events for pharmaceutical companies. Somehow ended up at AKQA as a producer, and then a small startup which became a really interesting company called Undercurrent, which is a digital strategy consultancy. I spent about 3 years there, and now the last 2 years at Ogilvy. I made the jump because I always had a lot of admiration for the brand, Ogilvy that is, and it seemed like a really interesting time for an organization like Ogilvy or Arnold to change and hopefully be a part of redefining brand communications. My job focuses a lot on the application of technology as a brand communicator. We think about words and images as the kind of discrete things that we create that are meant to communicate what we believe and what our brands stand for. Oftentimes you see brands doing things with technology which are counter to what they're investing tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars communicating, and I think it's actually a really unfortunate way to be wasting money and time.
And I'm Bernard Briggs, Chief Technology Officer for T3. I've been in the advertising world now for about 2 years. My background, though, is in computer science, and got my start with some Fortune 50 enterprise companies, like IBM and Dell. Being, though, in Austin, there are a lot of attractive startup opportunities as well, so I spent several years going from startup to startup, really helping them lift architecturally, software solutions off the ground. And then started to get into the agency world with Frog Design in New York, and most recently T3. So I've been in the world for about 2 years and have a blast.
Well, let's just start off really quickly with the title, Creative Technologist. It's been many don't like this title. It's been a really difficult thing for agencies to deal with, and Igor Clark at Wieden wrote a famous blog post a few months ago about how he would not hire somebody called a creative technologist at Wieden & Kennedy because it had gotten too loose, that to include people who were not necessarily technically skilled, but simply tech-savvy super users. And But one of the things that's kind of interesting is how did we, in the agency world, how did we get to this place where we're debating this title so passionately? You know, it's sort of, Jordan, I sort of wanted to start with you because you're thinking about actually changing your title to drop the creative technology moniker, and reasons for that.
Well, I have to say, you know, when I first read Igor's post, I wasn't sure if I agreed with it or not. But I think in the end I do. You know, for me, if you have the word technologist in your title, coding has to be part of what you do. I think, you know, we can't continue to argue the nuances of what the job is meant to be. It's right for some places and not for others. I don't code anymore, and I think, if nothing else, it's slightly misleading. But I think in general, you know, we'll probably have a long conversation today about why the title works in some places and doesn't, why it's necessary in some places and isn't in others. You know, for me, it has to do more with just an accurate representation of what I actually do every day. I think these days my job is far more strategic than it is technical. But to Igor's point, you know, we need to look past the day where simply being tech savvy, which everybody should be if we're trying to make what we claim to be capable of doing, is enough to claim that you're a technologist. It isn't. I think that the craft of building things is as important as the craft of writing or the craft of beautiful TV. And we need to celebrate those people in that way.
Go ahead.
As for debate, right? No, I love it. I love creative technologists, and you know, to counter really what was written, I don't think we hire anything but a creative technologist, but I think it needs a definition. So what we're proposing is not to lose the technology side of the technologist, and what we mean specifically when we put creative in front of it is that developers, engineers, programmers, whatever we have been, we've been viewed as preservationists. You know, our ability to take a creative concept, preserve it through a build, you know, bring the pixels to life and make it go live. But at the same time, what we're finding with the creative technologist is the ability to not only preserve and do that really well, as we always have, but at the same time, the creative side brings more of a provocative approach to it. So the ability to come in and provoke creative to do new and greater things. Maybe it's not one technology, more than likely. It's our ability to think through how we can combine technologies. So, you know, I think that definition is in order. So we're moving from this world of just being preservationists to actually being provocateurs as well. And so that's what we expect from the role, and it's working well for us.
When I think about the title, I think a lot about sort of what's happening in the industry, and it really starts to become a gap title. You know, when you see people start to have titles like Chief Digital Officer, what does that really mean when everyone's talking about post-digital? And I think, in my mind at least, creative technologist seems to be somewhat redundant because it's applying that focus on creativity when people, I guess, traditionally have not always viewed technology as a creative practice or endeavor. When in fact, you know, developers and technologists, these are people that create something out of nothing. You know, they're like the most creative people. So I think a lot of it is about mindset. Some of it is probably about actually how agencies need to get these people paid for. And just speaking purely in the business sense, technologists were always paid for in the production side of things, right? And we know that they obviously add value by being included in those conversations up front. And to be able to put the term creative in front of that suddenly lets a client who may not have ever understood that go, oh, okay, well, I get that. Or if it's technology strategy or creative technology, that suddenly becomes a valid way to get these people paid for while they're contributing to these conversations.
Yeah, that sort of leads to an interesting question about getting, you know, clients to pay for the kind of work that is more aligned with software development processes and a lot of the things that people talk about today, sort of iterative processes and experimental and things like that. Are these things within an agency context that are actually difficult processes to get, you know, to get going and get support for? When culturally everybody is saying this is the way you have to run business, agencies should be running software companies, does the development of agency creative actually work, you know, in that kind of context, and can it be paid for?
I can give a pretty direct answer to that. No. we can spend all the time that we like talking about the benefits of an agile methodology. That's just about being quicker on our toes, about iteration, about, thinking of the things that we make as evolving versus, a very kind of traditional waterfall approach to things. What we can't forget is that we're not software companies. We have clients, we work against very specific schedules and realities of the world, and none of the people that we sell to, whether an end client or procurement, actually gets the benefit, nor do I necessarily think that it would be better for us. I think there's a mixed model. I think the easiest way to describe it is nimble. It's not waterfall, it's not agile. It is something that borrows the best of both worlds, that gives you the flexibility to move quickly, but the assuredness that when you get to the end of a cycle, the product that your client thinks they're buying is what they get. So for me, I've never actually seen a traditional or a digital agency realize a pure agile play, because I don't think it's the right methodology for the kind of work that we do.
But I think the kind of work that we do is really what defines some of these challenges, right? So traditional advertising is about doing one thing really, really well. That perfect photo, the amazing typography, and then sort of putting that out there. It's not in. You don't get a second chance to spend the $10 million media buy for the Super Bowl. So I feel like philosophically that can tend to be at odds. And we've had this conversation a little bit about sort of thinking versus making, managing versus making. Traditional ad agencies actually don't make a lot of things. Digital agencies do. So how do we sort of find that sort of middle ground as traditional agencies start to make things? That starts to get into things beyond titles. It starts to talk about organizationally how we do that. Do places believe in the value of conceptualization through execution? All of those things I feel like are up for debate right now in our industry.
A lot of the nature of the work too, I think, can be radically different. So we're putting together experiences that on the pixel side of things that look great, but at the same time, I don't think I would venture to put a number on it. Maybe 80 or more % of the work we're doing on that end of production is powered by a lot of sophistication behind the scenes. So we're doing more and more as an agency. We're doing more and more on the enterprise side as well. So these experiences that you're seeing that might live for 3 months, for 6 months on short cycles are actually powered by a lot more complexity behind the scenes that does lend itself well, right, to kind of, the iteration and the iterative approach. So we're seeing more and more of that kind of work, not just bringing something visually to life, but actually building capabilities, within the brand that can bring one experience to life as well as a dozen more if they choose.
Yeah, so let's talk about brand experiences in mobile, actually. I mean, they've been talking a lot about that here at the conference and other places in the business about sort of the subpar performance of brand advertising, getting the budgets into mobile and things like that. Are you seeing any movement and requests for that on the agency side? For more experimentation and more performance on the brand experience side? Are they ignoring it pretty much on the agency side? And also just wondering, have you seen things that you've admired that some people have done, some successes that perhaps are not as well known or are still sort of on the horizon that people could latch onto?
Well, they're not ignoring it, right? We find ourselves in the role of a digital agency of record, specifically to mobile, often. So there's a big focus on it, and I think really at this point that the experimentation and the exploration that we bring to the table is expected. So not only are they embracing it, but they're expecting it. Because of a lot of the thinking that we're doing today in mobile. Take the mobile web, for instance. I'm of the opinion that we've kind of passed through an era that we call the era of accommodation, right? Where you have brands trying to get this mobile web checkbox checked, and essentially they've done that. They've all minified their desktop versions, they put it on a mobile device. Now, well, what's next? There's a lot more to get out of that technology, and they need technologists like us to think through that, to do the combining, to do the thinking and the concepting, and not just talk about it, but also do it. So that's what we're experiencing.
On our end, and I think we're really looking at mobile use cases, right? So we've been doing a lot of our work actually within the responsive web design framework, just simply because we know that there's so much value to building it once and then having that same sort of rich content experience across multiple platforms. So that's one of the things that we've been growing as far as the skill set, just recognizing the amount of users that are going to be accessing content through their mobile devices. I mean, I think the other thing that is interesting when we talk about brand advertising, I guess the question is, how are you defining brand advertising? When you see a brand like Starbucks issuing an app that has billions of dollars going through mobile payments, and that's not traditionally advertising, but it's clearly a brand that is thinking about, when we talk about the evolution of advertising as brands as service, brands as fulfillment on a promise, they're clearly doing that very, very successfully. Whereas you have other brands that are just running mobile banners in these places, and I think the challenge there is you're degrading a user experience with these tiny screens and you're having an ad there. So is there some type of value exchange? If you click on that ad and it, through all the data layers, knows that you're a huge fan of sports, get access to gated ESPN content. I mean, I know that's something that one of our clients, Volvo, did, which I thought was an interesting way to think about traditional mobile advertising.
I hate giving this as an answer, but it's complicated. It's a moving target. I think I find the word mobile to actually be somewhat confusing, because I think mobility is actually a bit more apt descriptor. So, and then we have to think about device as being a specific answer. We're only, the iPad's been around for 2.5 years. And the impact of that device in what I think is often considered to be the mobile landscape is actually quite significant. But to me, regardless of kind of the form factor, the thing that I think has affected a lot of the thinking that we do is for me, it kind of starts almost function up versus communication down. The device actually serves a purpose for you, and your connection to what that thing in your pocket or in your bag does for you is a little bit more intimate than the relationship you have with your laptop or with your desktop. And so, the first barrier is, if we're talking about apps, what gets me over that hump of actually wanting to install it? If it has no purpose in my life, it doesn't solve a functional need. Entertainment is really, really hard to penetrate, at least from an install base. So then, to your point, responsive design and adaptive experiences that are kind of device or context aware is really, really the way to go. But I think the challenging part for a lot of the people that we work with is the point of view right now tends to be kind of single-sided. That mobile or mobility in and of itself for a lot of clients, and I don't need to make broad generalizations, represents the phone or the tablet at best, and that in a lot of situations it is about the extension of what exists already into that environment. I think the best things that we see are when an execution is done that is just so aware of its own context that it makes the experience better. An often cited example is the VW GTI app that AQQA did to launch that product. The game itself was an advertisement, but it was an entertainment, and it had a purpose for being in that device that made the experience richer than just putting that on the web. Those to me are the most exciting opportunities, but I think it's going to continue to be about making the experience of a brand in whatever way it manifests itself smarter, richer, more valuable, more inclusive, and there are things that we can access like location that only make mobile that much more interesting.
The VW thing that you brought up, that game already existed.
Yes.
Right? So what I think is interesting about that is so many brands and advertisers are talking about creating new things when there are already things out there that you could leverage. So it should be much more about connecting.
Yeah, that was sort of my next question, is whether or not there were any platforms out there that, in watching sort of the platform development, a lot of what kind of things that you see here at AppNation, for instance, that look exciting potential, or on your side of the fence, we're talking to clients, is it really more about creating something original and unique and special for that brand for a specific moment? Are there platforms though that you see as potential places that you'd like to place work, that are starting to get some traction? Have you seen anything like that, on the brand advertising side?
Well, for me, yes, I am. I think, especially in the mobile space, our ability to extend mobile or bridge mobile with other channels, let's say the desktop, let's say out of home, maybe others, but our ability to take the technologies that are in our hand, that are available to us, and make the most out of them, squeezing out capabilities, for instance, behind WebKit and HTML5, getting into more sophisticated types of models where we're actually connecting and pairing with experiences through HTML5 and bridging channels, right? So there's some platforms starting to speak to us out there and starting to pop up that's taking more and more advantage of those advanced types of technologies behind the scenes, things that we're not using today.
I mean, I think for a lot of brands, they kind of skip the step of prospecting. To your point about the VW app, another great one was, I can't remember what toilet paper brand did it, but they bought Sit or Squat, which was this like crowdsourced public bathroom app. That's the easy way to go about it, and most of the developers who are churning out cheap single purpose apps would be psyched to have a brand come and offer them $50,000 to buy something that exists with a proven user base and demand. There's no reason we shouldn't be starting there.
Is that something that happens a lot, that developers are coming to you with ideas, mobile developers?
Not as much as I think we would like. I think part of that really does come from, creatively people want to own something that is theirs, right? So there can be obviously some hesitancy to say, well, maybe it's not about doing something that's solely ours, and it's much more about partnering with something that was already successful, that, as Jordan said, has a built-in audience. You could apply that across the board, right? Some people might say that the need to build yet another interface for users to interact is sort of dead. You've got the Pinterests, the Twitters, the Facebooks of the world. Do you need to create yet another destination that people aren't going to go to?
Right. For collecting photographs or something like that. That's interesting. So, sort of coming to the end here, sort of always wondering, people working in the space that you're in, where do you look for inspiration? Within the advertising world, what part of the technology world, where do you go to find ideas that really very different? What communities and things like that are you watching in order to look for creative ideas?
Shall I?
Yeah, please.
For us, where we find the gold is in combinations. So, we're taking technologies. Actually, we subscribe heavily to the concept of lateral thinking. And what we're doing within T3, and it stands for the think tank, we actually have a think tank approach to that exact problem. And literally, we have some die. So there are 3 dice, right? And what we'll do is we'll put different types of technologies on those dice, or those die, because we know that when we roll them, right, we're going to get 3 different domains. And what's interesting for us is when we think through how can we combine those 3 domains. So if you were to roll, SMS, location-based services, and WebSockets, what's going to come out of that thinking, right? So that's essentially putting us into a corner to actually, really truly think laterally in combinations, and we're finding, a lot of gold in that technique.
From my perspective, I think a lot of it is just sort of the culture. I think we're all in this industry because we truly do believe that technology is fascinating, it's inspirational, it's changing our lives, and most of the people that I tend to hang out with are also similarly as nerdy and complete technologists, and so a lot of that just comes from conversations like this that we have. People that you were like, wow, what did you create? And you came up with this new app, and who you're talking to, and we go to the tech meetups, and I think that there's a big community, especially here in New York, that really actually does support that, that really sort of continues to inspire not just those of us who are working on the digital side of what we do within the agency, but I find that across the agency, we're finding a lot of people that are really interested in seeing how there are these new orientations and these new references that we can start to look to when we think about what advertising is.
A couple of specific things or places that come to mind. There's this great monthly meetup, actually it's around here in Soho, called Dorkbot, which it's 3 people presenting 3 different projects. I think their tagline is people doing interesting things with electricity. It's inspirational usually. One of them is completely kooky and out there, and the other 2 are wildly inspirational. I'll say the kooky one isn't. There's tons of great maker fairs. I love the kind of intersection of kind of Main Street entrepreneurialism with crafting, and you see people nowadays just making things that, it's pretty much possible to make anything, whether electronic or mechanical or otherwise. And I'm blanking on what I thought the last interesting one was. But hit the street, the third one honestly was the museums. Don't ignore what artists are actually doing, because I think when you look at the application of technology and provocation, you see people whose only goal in life is actually not to communicate anything, but who is to provoke you, to make you think something, to challenge your experience of things. And artists have wonderfully pure visions of how these experiences unfold. You look at what Kraftwerk did at MoMA recently. That was a musical performance unlike any that had happened before. That art is actually unbelievable inspiration for a lot of the things that we do, because they make people feel something.
Do you feel that that people in the agency world now are feeling that innovation and change in sort of the creative spark is coming through technology now? It's one of those things that organizationally it's still always been a challenge to sort of fit the technologies into the agency world, but our agencies now recognizing that this is the area where change and innovation is taking place, and that is contributing to creative. Is that now an argument that you no longer have to make?
Yes, it is no longer an argument. I think we're in an exciting time. I think that the acceleration is actually kicking in. We're not arguing amongst ourselves anymore. We're actually changing the places we work in. It's a foregone conclusion now. Everybody's accepted it.
Technologists aren't just becoming more creative. We also have this world of creatives becoming more technological, right? So it's turning out to be a really good pairing, right? So the same thing they're experiencing on the tech side.
Right.
So what we're finding is that you've got these great preservationists, right, that are making their way further and further left in the process. So now they're in the pitch, right? So you have technologists in the room, taking up a significant part of pitching business, and they'll not only pitch, but they'll stay through the definition, the discovery. They'll advise on wireframes, advise on visuals, right, and then pick it up and take the thing and actually land it. And there's a lot of value in that.
Yeah, that sort of leads to that next question, because we were talking about this before in our conversation about the distinction that you guys as managers of these folks make between a technologist who actually can work with a creative team, can be in the pitch, and those are not suited to it or not even inclined to find that fun. So what kind of characteristics do you look for in somebody with a serious technology background and skill set for a creative position?
Okay, one word.
I think it's about mindset, right? So somebody said, you can put a technologist in a room with a bunch of creatives to brainstorm, and if that person walks out and is like, oh my god, I never want to do that ever again, or somebody comes out of that and says, oh my god, that was amazing, you gave me a blank piece of paper, I had so much fun filling that in, and these are people who view technology as enabling, right? And so for me, it becomes much more about a mindset and an approach, as well as when we talk about how our agencies sort of organizing that. I mean, there's broader changes across the agency where collaboration is sort of key in allowing that to thrive. So, I mean, that's what we look for in people when we think about what is that creative technologist, maybe without the word creative in there since it's implied.
and I think for us, I want to clarify that there's still the developers and the programmers and the engineers that are that other type, right? They don't want to be in the pitch, right? They don't want to be sitting with designers. They just want to do, right? And very valid, excellent skill, but there is a separation. Right? But when we're looking for those creative technologists, what we're looking for is really just passion. And Jordan brought up a good point earlier. We're looking for that mentality that anything can be built. Mm-hmm. And so, typically we all know the engineers who come in, well, we can't do that because of X. And well, what about Y? I don't know if I would think in that area because of Z. That's great at a certain point, but not in the ideation, right? So these creative technologists we're seeking are the ones who are passionate. They're not necessarily engineers, they're not necessarily developers, right? But they may have built a skill set on their own because of that passion, right? We tell the story about one of the most recent creative technologists we hired was a sandwich shop guy at Jimmy John's, right? Who had taught himself Flash and rich experience development to an expert plus level, and it's just been invaluable to the team.
And the one word?
I got nothing else to add. I concur.
I thought you had a word.
Problem solver.